As you may or may not know from last week, I have moved now to New York. So if you would like to have a reading, it's going to be live here in New York, or we can do Zoom. We can do all of those things. I want to take a moment right now to thank my channel patrons that really have helped me to keep things floating, keep things going. There are so many. I have new ones that I need to go through and thank personally, but I don't have that list right now. But I want to thank the top tier patrons that have consistently helped with my Hello Draco. I want to thank the patrons who have consistently supported me in my work and my channel. I would like to thank Mary Jane King, D. Lucaro, Lauren Morgan Richards. I have so many more, and I promise you I will thank you. I will thank you when I get the list. I've been moving and things have been going a little bizarre. Draco, thank you. You love the new design. That's because I am in a new house. Well, it's not a new house. It's an old house, but I'm in a new location all across the country. I left California for New York, and I am grateful every second that I did. Um, Thank you, Dave. Loving your new home. Yes, this is also another haunted old house, and I am so thrilled, so excited to be here. I've encountered some rather peculiar spirits. I think, though, they're getting more accoladed to me. They're understanding me a little bit more. The first night that I was here, there was from what I could gather, there was a Victorian woman who had walked in right over here. Hello, Stephen. Good to see you. So there was a Victorian woman who came in to sort of look. She sort of gave me the idea of, I don't know you. Who are you? You're new. What is this? And then there was another woman that I sensed who went back and forth between her youth and in her 70s or 80s. But I discovered part of it was who she was. Hello, Mary Jane. Good to see you, my dear. So forgive me if I'm not able to see all of the chats. It is me. I am without admin these days. So when I am doing my readings, please be nice to me. That would be lovely. Be nice in the chats. I will have some people who will be looking. But back on topic. So there was another spirit of a German she almost seems like the housekeeper, and she didn't like me at first. She's getting a little bit more accustomed to me, which is good. But there was a time where I would go down that back hallway and I would feel a little. I go, okay, this is something strange. But it turns out that my neighbor had lived in this very flat. She lived in this unit. And she said, oh, by the way, she said, it's a very active one. I said, yes, I've seen these three. She says, yes. And you'll discover more, but those three definitely. And I said, but the woman in the back, she doesn't like me. And my neighbor said, she doesn't like anybody, but she did alert the neighbors downstairs when the house had caught on fire. So we have to thank her for the fact that there is still this lovely old 135-year, 140-year-old home. I'm not exactly certain of the date, but my intuition is probably around 1880, 1882 maybe. My friend Lauren Morgan Richards, actually, if you haven't seen his work, he plays the guitar, he is an author. You definitely want to go find Lauren Morgan Richards on here. But he discovered an old photographs of this house, of the post office next door, and there's this house. So quite phenomenal. I really am loving this grand old dame, as the case were. It is a country house, so it's not a grand New York City home, but it's charming. You really can't see, but well, you can kind of see over here. So the doors downstairs, they're all heavy, solid oak. Hi Dee, lovely to see you. Welcome, my dear. So the doors downstairs this was once one house. So all of the floors, all of the doors, all of the woodwork, all of the trim, it's heavy, it's ornamental, the woodwork is oak. Up here, there's the planks of wood are wider and the doors are softer material, but they've all been painted, 130 years ago to look like tiger oak. So it's not, it's I don't know, it might be pine, I don't know. But that was common in those days. Victorians the first floor was for entertaining. The second floor was for the family. So you would have drawing rooms and sitting rooms and parlors and breakfast rooms and libraries and music rooms and rooms and rooms and rooms if you could afford it. Anyway, we have several people who have joined us here. I think it says 5 people. 5 people will join us now, 5 people will join us later, and then in playback, maybe more people will. Oh, if you would like to be like my patrons, the top tier ones, as I said, Mary Jane King, Dee Lucero, Lauren Morgan Richards, and again, I have several more that I would like. If you would like to be like these people who support independent artists, you can find me on patreon.com under The Gentleman Psychic. You can find me on thegentlemanpsychic.com. You can find me on Facebook, The Gentleman Psychic. You can find me on Instagram, The Gentleman Psychic. As far as support, Venmo is Richard-Lale Lillard. And then on PayPal, it's rlillard6@gmail.com. Oh, and that reminds me. So if you were to go on to PayPal, if you want to give one-time gift, those are always accepted. But it'll come up if you type in rlillard6@gmail.com. My PayPal comes up as Richie. Now, for those of you who know me more recently, those of you who have been on the journey with me and have been a lot closer, you know that I no longer go by the name of Richie. It was another life. It feels like 100 years ago now, but that was what I went by. So don't be alarmed when it comes up as Richie. Anyway, I think I've rambled enough, and really the reason that you are here with me right now is because Murder on the Orient Express. Did you hear that? Wait, I don't know if you can hear the train. I love that sound. So that, ladies and gentlemen, boils and ghouls, is the train that takes one not to all of these exotic locations, but it can take you to New York City. Yes, I love the sound of the train. I'm always reminded every time it goes through, I always think of the 1991 Addams Family scene. Oh, hello, Charlie. So I always think of the 1991 Addams Family scene where Gomez Addams is in the attic and he's playing with his toy trains because he's pondering over who is Fester? Is Fester really my brother? And he's playing with the trains, and Morticia says, "Oh no!" And Wednesday says, "Father's playing with his trains again." And then they go on to the diesel, and anyway, happy memories, good things. So here we are, my darlings. We are at chapter 15. The evidence of the passenger's luggage. Having delivered himself of various polite insecurities, and having told Mrs. Hubbard that he would order coffee to be brought to her, Perrault was able to take his leave accompanied by his 2 friends. "Well, we have made a start and drawn a blank," observed Monsieur Buch. "Whom shall we tackle next?" It would be the simplest, I think, just to proceed along the train carriage by carriage. That means that we start with number 16, the amiable Monsieur Hardman. Mr. Hardman, who was smoking a cigar, welcomed them affably. Come right in, gentlemen. That is, if it's humanly possible. It's just a mite cramped in here for a party. Monsieur Bouc explained the object of their visit, and the big detective nodded comprehendingly. That's okay, to tell the truth. I've been wondering you didn't get down to it sooner. Here are my keys, gentlemen, and if you like to search my pockets too, why, you're welcome. Shall I reach the grips down for you? The conductor will do that, Michael. The contents of Mr. Hardman's 2 grips were soon examined and passed. They contained perhaps an undue proportion of spirituous liqueur. Mr. Hardman winked. It's not often they search our grips at frontiers, not if you fix the conductor. I handed out a wad of Turkish notes right away, and there's been no trouble so far. And at Paris? Mr. Hardman winked again. By the time I get to Paris, he said, what's left over of this little lot will go into a bottle labelled hair wash. You are not a believer in prohibition, Monsieur Hardman, said Monsieur Bouc with a smile. Well, said Hardman, I can't say prohibition has ever worried me any. Ah, said Monsieur Bouc, the speakeasy. He pronounced the word with care, savouring it. Your American terms are so quaint, so expressive, he said. Me, I would much like to go to America, said Perrault. You'd learn a few go-ahead methods over there, said Hardman. Europe wants waking up. She's half asleep. It is true that America is the country of progress, agreed Perrault. There is much that I admire about Americans. Only I am perhaps old-fashioned. But me, I find the American woman less charming than my own countrywomen, the French or the Belgian girl, the coquettish charming. I think there is no one to touch her. Hardman turned away to peer out of the snow for a minute. Perhaps you're right, Monsieur Perrault, he said, but I guess every nation likes its own girls best. He blinked as though the snow hurt his eyes. Kind of dazzling, isn't it? He remarked. Say, gentlemen, this business is getting on my nerves, murder and the snow and all, and nothing doing, just hanging about and killing time. I'd like to get busy after someone or something. The true Western spirit of hustle, said Perrault with a smile. The conductor replaced the bags, and they moved on to the next compartment. Colonel Abanoff was sitting in the corner smoking a pipe and reading a magazine. Perrault explained their errand. The colonel made no demur. He had 2 heavy leather suitcases. The rest of my kit has gone by long sea, he explained. Like most army men, the colonel was a neat packer. The examination of his baggage took only a few minutes. Perrault noted a packet of pipe cleaners. You always use the same kind? He asked. Usually, if I can get them. Ah, Perrault nodded. These pipe cleaners are identical with the one he had found on the floor of the dead man's compartment. Dr. Constantine remarked as much when they were out in the corridor again. Tout de même, murmured Perrault, I can hardly believe it. It is not dans son character, and when you have said that, you have said everything. The door of the next compartment was closed. It was that occupied by Princess Dragmiroff. They knocked on the door, and the princess's deep voice called, Entrez. Monsieur Bouc was spokesman. He was very deferential and polite as he explained their errand. The princess listened to him in silence, her small, toad-like face quite impassive. If it is necessary, messieurs, she said quietly, when he had finished, that is all there is to it. My maid has the keys. She will attend to it with you. Does your maid always carry your keys, madame? Asked Perrault. Certainly, monsieur. And if during the night at one of the frontiers the custom officials should require a piece of luggage to be opened? The lady shrugged her shoulders. It is very unlikely, but in such case the conductor would fetch her. You trust her then implicitly, madame? I've told you so already, said the princess quietly. I do not employ people whom I do not trust. Yes, said Peru thoughtfully. Trust is something that, in these days, it is perhaps better to have a homely woman whom one can trust than more chic-made, for example, some smart Parisienne. He saw the dark, intelligent eyes come slowly round and fasten themselves upon his face. What exactly are you implying, Monsieur Perrault? Oh, nothing, madame. Nothing. But yes, you think, do not, that I should have a smart Frenchwoman to attend my toilette? It would be perhaps more usual, madame. She shook her head. Schmidt is devoted to me. Her voice dwelt lingeringly on the words, devotion, c'est impayable. The German woman had arrived with the keys. The princess spoke to her in her own language, telling her to open the valises and help the gentlemen in their search. She herself remained in the corridor, looking out at the snow, and Perrault remained with her, leaving Monsieur Bouc to ask of searching the luggage. She regarded him with a grim smile. Well, monsieur, do you not wish to see what my valises contain? He shook his head. Madame, it is a formality, that is all. Are you sure? In your case? Oui, yes. And yet I knew and loved Sonia Armstrong. What do you think then? That I would not soil my hands with killing such a canaille as the man as Cassetti? Well, perhaps you are right. She was silent a minute or two. Then she said, with such a man as that, do you know what I should have liked to have done? I should have liked to have called my servants, flog this man to death, and fling him out on the rubbish heap. That is the way things were done when I was young, monsieur. Still, he did not speak, just listened attentively. She looked at him with a sudden impetuosity. You do not say anything, Monsieur Perrault. What is it that you are thinking, I wonder? He looked at her with a very direct glance. I think, madame, that your strength is in your will, not in your arm. She glanced down at her thin, black-clad arms, ending in those claw-like yellow hands with the rings on the fingers. That is true. I have no strength in these, none. I do not know if I am sorry or glad. Then she turned abruptly back towards her carriage, where the maid was busily packing up the cases. The princess cut short Monsieur Bouc's apologies. There is no need for you to apologize, monsieur, she said. A murder has been committed. Certain actions have to be performed. That is all there is to it. Vous êtes bien, amie madame. She inclined her head slightly as they departed. The doors of the next two carriages were shut. Monsieur Bouc paused and scratched his head. Diable, he said. This may be awkward. These are diplomatic passports. Their baggage is exempt. From customs examination, yes, but a murder is different. I know. All the same, we do not want to have the complications. Do not distress yourself, my friend. The Count and Countess will be reasonable. See how amiable Princess Dragmirov was about it? She is truly a grande dame. These two are also of the same position, but the Count impressed me as a man of somewhat truculent disposition. He was not pleased when you insisted on questioning his wife, and this will annoy him still further. Suppose we omit them. After all, they can have nothing to do with the matter. Why should I stir up needless trouble for myself? No, I do not agree, said Perrault. I feel sure that Count Andreilly will be reasonable. At any rate, let us make the attempt. And before Monsieur Bouc could reply, he rapped sharply on the door of number 13. A voice came from within and cried, Entrez! The Count was sitting in the corner near the door reading a newspaper. The Countess was curled up in the opposite corner near the window. There was a pillow behind her head, and she seemed to have been asleep. "Pardon, Monsieur le Comte," began Pierrot. "Pray forgive this intrusion. It is that we are making a search of all baggage on the train. In most cases, a mere formality, but it has to be done. Monsieur Book suggests that you have a diplomatic passport. You might reasonably claim to be exempt from such search." The Count considered for a moment. "Thank you," he said, "but I do not think that I care for an exception to be made in my case. I should prefer that our baggage should be examined like the other passengers." He turned to his wife. "You do not object, I hope, Elena?" "Not at all," said the Countess without hesitation. A rapid and somewhat perfunctory search followed. Perrault seemed to be trying to mask an embarrassment and making very small pointless remarks such as, "Here is a label all wet on your suitcase, madame," as he lifted down a blue Morocco case with initials on it and a coronet. The Countess did not reply to this observation. She seemed indeed rather bored by the whole proceeding, remaining curled up in her corner, staring dreamily out the window, whilst the men searched her luggage in the compartment next door. Perrault finished his search by opening the little cupboard above the wash basin and taking a rapid glance at its contents: a sponge, face cream, powder, and a small bottle labelled Trianol. Then, with polite remarks on either side, the search party withdrew. Mrs. Hubbard's compartment, that of the dead man, and Perrault's own came next. They now came to the second-class carriages. The first one, numbers 10, 11, was occupied by Mary Debnam, who was reading a book, and Greta Olsen, who was fast asleep, but woke with a start at their entrance. Perrault repeated his formula. The Swedish lady seemed agitated. Mary Debnam calmly indifferent. Perrault addressed himself to the Swedish lady. "If you permit, mademoiselle, we will examine your baggage first, and then perhaps you would be so good as to see how the American lady is getting on. We have moved her into one of the carriages next to the coach, but she is still very upset at the result of her discovery. I have ordered coffee to be sent to her, but I think she is of one of those to whom someone to talk to is a necessity of the first water." The good lady was instantly sympathetic. She would go immediately. It must have been indeed a terrible shock to the nerves, and already the poor lady was upset by the journey and leaving her daughter. Ah, yes, certainly she would go at once. Her case was not locked, and she would take with her some sal ammonic. She bustled off. Her possessions were soon examined. They were meagre in the extreme. She had evidently not noticed the missing wires from the hat box. Miss Debnam had put her book down. She was watching Perrault when he asked her. She handed over the keys. Then he lifted down a case and opened it. She said, "Why did you send her away, Monsieur Perrault?" "I, mademoiselle? Why, to minister to the American lady." "An excellent pretext, but the pretext all the same." "I do not understand you, mademoiselle." "I think you understand me very well," she smiled. "You wanted to get me alone, wasn't that it?" "You're putting words into my mouth, mademoiselle." "And ideas into your head?" "No, I don't think so. The ideas are already there." "That's right, isn't it?" "Mademoiselle, we have a proverb. Que excuse accuse. Is that what you were going to say? You must give the credit to the certain amount of observation and common sense. For some reason or other, you have got into your head that I know something about this sordid business, the murder of a man I never saw before." "Oh, that was her." You are imagining things, mademoiselle." "No, I'm not imagining things at all. But it seems to me that a lot of time is wasted by not speaking the truth, by beating about the bush instead of coming straight out and with things." "And you do not like to waste time." "No, you like to come straight to the point. You like the direct method. Ah, bien, I will give it to you, the direct method. I will ask you of the meaning of certain words that I have overheard on the journey from Syria. I had got to the train to do what the English call stretched legs at the station of Konya. Your voice and Colonel's, mademoiselle, they came to me out of the night. You said to him, not now, not now. When it's all over, when it's behind us. What did you mean by those words, mademoiselle? She said very quietly, do you think I meant murder? It is I who am asking you, mademoiselle. She sighed, was lost a minute in thought, then, as though rousing herself, she said, those words had a meaning, monsieur, but not one that I can tell you. I can only give you my solemn word of honor that I had never set eyes on this man Ratchet in my life until I saw him on this train. And you refused to explain those words to me? Yes. If you like to put it that way, I refuse. They had to do with a task I had undertaken. A task that is now ended? What do you mean? It is ended, is it not? Why should you think so? Listen, mademoiselle, I will recall to you another incident. There was a delay in the train on the day we were to reach Stamboul. You were very agitated, mademoiselle. You, so calm, so self-controlled, you lost that calm. I did not want to miss my connection. So you said, but mademoiselle, the Orient Express leaves Stamboul every day of the week. Even if you had missed the connection, it would only have been a matter of 24 hours delay. Miss Debnam, for the first time, showed signs of losing her temper. You do not seem to realize that one may have friends awaiting one's arrival in London, and that a day's delay upsets arrangements and causes a lot of annoyance. Ah, it is like that? There are friends awaiting your arrival, madame? You do not want to cause them inconvenience, naturally. And yet, it is curious. What is curious? On the train, again, we have a delay. And this time, a more serious delay, since there is no possibility of sending a telegram to your friends or of getting them on the long distance? The telephone, you mean? Ah, yes, the portmanteau call, as you say in England. Mary Debnam smiled a little in spite of herself. Trunk call, she corrected. Yes, as you say, it is extremely annoying not to be able to get any word through, either by telephone or telegraph. And yet, mademoiselle, this time your manner is quite different. You no longer betray the impatience. You are calm and philosophical. Mary Debnam flushed and bit her lip. She no longer felt inclined to smile. You do not answer, mademoiselle. I'm sorry, I did not know that there was anything to answer. The explanation of your change of attitude, mademoiselle. Don't you think that you are making rather a fuss out of nothing, Monsieur Perrault? Perrault spread his hands in an apologetic gesture. It is perhaps a fault with us detectives. We expect the behavior to be always consistent. We do not allow for changes of mood. Mary Debnam made no reply. You know Colonel Arbuthnot well, mademoiselle. He fancied that she was relieved by the change of subject. I met him for the first time on this journey. Have you any reason to suspect that he may have known this man Ratchet? She shook her head decisively. I'm quite sure he didn't. Why, are you sure? By the way he spoke. And yet, mademoiselle, we found the pipe cleaner on the floor of the dead man's compartment, and Colonel Arbuthnot is the only man on the train who smoked the pipe. He watched her narrowly, but she displayed neither surprise nor emotion, merely said, nonsense, it's absurd. Colonel Arbuthnot is the last man in the world to be mixed up in the crime, especially a theatrical kind of crime like this. It was so much that Perrault himself thought that he had found himself on the point of agreeing with her. He said instead, I must remind you that you do not know him very well, mademoiselle. She shrugged her shoulders. I know the type well enough, he said very gently. You still refuse to tell me the meaning of those words when it's behind us. She said coldly, I have nothing more to say. It does not matter, said Hercule Poirot. I shall find out. He bowed and left the compartment, closing the door after him. Was that wise, my friend? Said Monsieur Bouc. You have put her on guard, and through her you have put Colonel on his guard also. Mon ami, if you wish to catch a rabbit, you put a ferret into the hole, and if the rabbit is there, he runs. That's all I have done. They entered the compartment of Hildegarde Schmiede. The woman was standing in readiness, her face respectful but unemotional. Poirot took a quick glance through the contents of the small case on the seat. Then he motioned to the attendant to get down the bigger suitcase from the rack. The keys, he said. It is not locked, monsieur. Poirot undid the hasps and lifted the lid. Aha, he said, and turning to Monsieur Bouc, you remember what I said. Look here, a little moment. On the top of the suitcase was hastily rolled up brown wagon-lit uniform. The solidity of the German woman underwent a sudden change. Ach, she cried. That is not mine. I did not put it there. I was never looked in that case since we left Stamboul. Indeed, it's true. She looked from one to the other pleadingly. Poirot took her gently by the arm and soothed her. No, all is well. We believe you. Do not be agitated. I am sure you did not hide the uniform, as I am sure that you are a good cook. See, you are a good cook. Are you not? Bewildered. The woman smiled in spite of herself. Yes, I am indeed. All my ladies have said so. She stopped, her mouth open, looking frightened again. No, said Poirot. I assure you, all is well. See, I will tell you how this happened. This man, the man you saw in the wagon-lit uniform, comes out of the dead man's compartment. He collides with you. That is bad luck for him. He has hoped that no one will see him. What to do next? He must to get rid of his uniform. It is now not a safeguard, but a danger. His glance went to Monsieur Bouc and Dr. Constantine, who were listening attentively. There is the snow, you see, the snow which confuses all his plans. Where can he hide these clothes? All the compartments are full. No, he passes one where the door is open and shows it to be unoccupied. It must be the one belonging to the woman with whom he has just collided. He slips in, removes the uniform, and jams it hurriedly into the suitcase on the rack. It may be some time before it is discovered. And then, said Monsieur Bouc, that we must discuss, said Poirot with a warming glance. He held up the tunic. A button, the third down, was missing. Poirot slipped his hand into the pocket and took out the conductor's pass key, used to unlock the doors of the compartments. Here is the explanation of how our man was able to pass through locked doors, said Monsieur Bouc. Your question to Mrs. Hubbard was unnecessary. Locked or not locked, the man could easily get through the communicating door. After all, if wagon-lit uniform, why not wagon-lit key? Why not indeed, said Poirot. I thought that other was Poirot, but it was not. We must have known it, really. You remember Michael said that the door into the corridor of Mrs. Hubbard's compartment was locked when he came in to answer her bell. That is so, monsieur, said the conductor. That is why I thought the lady must have been dreaming. But now it is easy, continued Mr. Bouc. Doubtless he meant to relock the communicating door also, but perhaps he heard some movement from the bed and it startled him. We have now, said Poirot, only to find the scarlet kimono. True, and these last two compartments are occupied by men. We will search all the same. Oh, assuredly. Besides, I remember what you said. Hector McQueen acquiesced willingly in the search. Just as soon as you did, he said with a rueful smile. I feel I'm just definitely the most suspicious character on the train. You've only got to find a will in which the old man left me all his money, and that'll just about fix things. Monsieur Bouc bent a suspicious glance upon him. That's just my fun, said McQueen hastily. He'd never have left me a cent, really. I was just useful to him, languages and so on. You're apt to be done down, if you don't speak anything but good American. I'm no linguist myself, but I know that I call shopping and hotel snappy bits in French and German and Italian. His voice was a little louder than usual. It was as though he was slightly uneasy at the search in spite of his willingness. Pierrot emerged. "Nothing," he said. "Not even a compromising bequest," McQueen sighed. "Well, that's a load off my mind," he said humorously. They moved on to the last compartment. The examination of the luggage of the big Italian and the valet yielded no result. The three men stood at the end of the coach looking at each other. "What next?" asked Monsieur Bouc. "We will go back to the dining car," said Pierrot. "We know now all that we can know. We have evidence of passengers, the evidence of their baggage, the evidence of your eyes. We can expect no further help. It must be our part now to use our brains." He felt in his pocket for a cigarette case. It was empty. "I will join you in a moment," he said. "I shall need the cigarettes. This is a very difficult, very curious affair. Who wore that scarlet kimono? Where is it now? I wish I knew. There is something in this case, some factor that escapes me. It is difficult because it has been made difficult, but we still discuss it. Pardon me a moment." He went hurriedly along the corridor to his own compartment. He knew a further supply of cigarettes in one of his vaisselles. He got it down and snapped back the lock. Then he sat back on his heels and stared. Neatly folded on the top of the case was a thin scarlet kimono embroidered with dragons. "So," he murmured, "it is like a defiance. Very well, I take it up." And with that, I'm going to end for now because I've had a lot of tea and I have to use the facilities. Love you, all of that stuff. Thank you so much.